So the thing that probably attracted me to the project first was just the fact that you were putting together a full cast audio drama in Australia. I mean, audio dramas are what got me into voice acting, and so the fact that without even seeing the script, that you were pulling together a group of people to make it, yeah, that was it.
To be honest, it was the concept of it and meeting you, Justin P. Bechtold. I didn't say it as well as him. The script barely existed at the time, but I really liked the idea of it. And then when I read some of those scenes for you, and you said, well, this is interesting, well, let's have a try. And I just gave you a couple of different versions of it, thinking of how he was. And then stayed attached because the script just get better and better. And by the time we actually did it, I was fully into the script.
I was at a friend's wedding interstate when I saw the post, and it sounded really fun and interesting, and the character is a bit different to the kind of character I normally play, so I thought that would be fun to put something down for her and just give it a shot. So really I was only able to do a couple of takes before I had to choose something to send through to you. Literally, it was an hour before the wedding, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just record this.
When I was on holiday at Box Hill Institute, we got contacted by the higher ed department of the music group, and a close composer friend of mine told me about it, and he said that he couldn't do it, and he told me about this like interesting concept of this creature called a Yowie and the history behind it, and he actually had to drop out of it, and he was like, you should jump on it and try it out.
You have to put everything into your voice, and so oftentimes you will feel like you are being over the top and utterly ridiculous in what you're doing, and yet you'll listen back to the audio and it will sound, there'll be the barest inkling of a colouring of what you're trying to do. So I think even basically if you're in front of a microphone every day, the big temptation is just to start working smaller, and you've got to really push. It does feel like basically pushing out from yourself, like you're pushing energy out there in order to actually have that emotion come across.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I've done a bit of podcasting, but in an interview sense, and so particularly the action scenes in the storyline were just so much fun. It was freeing to obviously be working off the other actors, but not to feel like there was a camera on you, so you could really just embody what was happening. It was, freeing and really fun.
Just coming into the studio and getting to be him for a while, particularly with the twists and turns in the character. I mean, it really had to be... It's almost something... the difference, I guess, with learning a role is that you will read the whole role, you'll learn your lines, and you'll have that absolutely down, and you've got to be careful not to give it away. In this case, I purposefully did not want to know all the twists and everything. I mean, obviously you prepare, but I didn't want it fully rehearsed, because that way I might telegraph what's happening, and you don't want that in a project like this. What you really, really want is for the audience to come along for the ride and find out what's happening as it goes.
It was wonderful. Most of the time I'm recording at home just by myself, or I've got someone connected by a Skype call. But being in a studio and being able to play off other people is just such a gift, because instead of having to guess at what they might do with a particular line, you can just listen and then respond. And so everything that you're trying to bring in terms of emotional colouring just can jump out of you at the right moment. So it was awesome.
I'm going to say fun again. I just really, really enjoyed this. As I said, the character was a bit different too. Again, this is that whole audio versus visual thing. I don't know if I would have been cast as Martha in the television or film version of the podcast. So it was just great to play with a character that I have not normally approached. Just, I guess, her gravitas and her position, and she's just a bit different. So it was just really fun.
I get a synopsis or a script or storyboard or whatever kind of narrative I can get my hands on in early stages, and then I'll try to just create a visceral palette of sounds and of colours, and try to establish what the story sounds like in a music form. That was loads of fun, but yeah.
I was blown away by that. The music, everything. Really surprised you guys somehow managed to make me sound alright. No, but I know that that's a lot to do with the writing and the production. I am quite staggered by what you guys came up with at the end of it all.
Yeah, the music kind of makes me, particularly the opening music, makes me think of almost Game of Thrones crossed with Star Wars, you know, when the words are moving up the screen.
Audio dramas are something that I consume as a fan, as well as basically like being in them when I can. And the sound design, the level of production behind what you've done with Yowie is incredible. I can't think of an audio drama, I honestly can't think of one commercially produced that I've listened to that has that intricate level of detail, that amount of effort put into creating a sense of space. I think people are really going to enjoy that, and I think with Australian Gothic, I can't really say too much about genre here without tipping hats, but I think to honour the genre that you're sitting in, a sense of space and isolation is so important, and you need quality sound design to bring that in.
I remember that there was references of the Twilight Zone, and I think Halloween, and a bunch of others. And each one had this very iconic instrument or melody or something like that. And I noticed every single one of those kind of themes had that same kind of traction. And I remember you were talking about nostalgia, how that you wanted this theme to become somewhat iconic in the future when you listen back, and it will give you that nostalgic feeling. So from a different perspective, nostalgia is hard to create, because nostalgia revolves around the past, hearing something like 10 years ago. But yeah, I found it interesting being able to just experiment with certain colours and musical melodies to try and form something that's quite catchy or something like that.
I don't think I realised how transformative the sound effects and the music and hearing everyone's voices and the story properly together would be. Often, I was saying earlier, often you listen to podcasts and there'll be the occasional sound in there, but the sound is this whole character that's present throughout, and it really lifts the story to the next level.
So I felt like that with Yowie. And I think others will as well, where you'll forget where you are, you'll forget who you are, and you'll just be in the story with these characters, with what's happening, and you're terrified or stuff like that. And yeah, so good though, so good.
A lot of that stuff really was happening inside my head. I mean, I was really feeling that. God, I almost felt tears in my eyes when in one of the scenes, when he was looking for his son, guessed me out. Yeah, it was. It felt real in the studio, and you always wonder if that's going to translate. I hope it has.
I don't think of it so much as weird. I think of that basically as when things are really working right. I think there were some things that Peter does in some of the early episodes that just tie together the illustration of the rest of the action with his lines that are just wonderful. So, yeah, it's a real challenge to do it right. But yeah, I think it really adds to the reality of everything. So not weird, just awesome.
That was funny, listening to it. I guess because, particularly with action stuff, I felt that when I was recording it. I was sort of more aware of some of the physicality for the other characters, because I already had a vision of what I was doing in my head. I don't know if that sounds a bit weird, but it was just occasionally I was like, oh, yeah. And the camp scenes, you know, it's so full at the camp with what would be the billy or whatever, and drinking tea and those sorts of things. yeah, just really exciting to hear all those sounds and have it at a sort of 3D quality, even though it's audio.
I'd almost go as far as to say that it's more about relationships than a crime thriller or anything supernatural.
I think it is an intelligent combination of several genres. I think pretty quickly people will get a sense of both the fact that there is relationship or family drama in there, and that there is a lot of action in there as well. I don't want to say too much about the other elements, but I think it's a really clever blend of some really evocative genres, like some of which I'm a huge fan of, and I think you've done a really good job with the writing of not giving one of those legs of your writing precedence at the expense of another. It never feels like any part of basically that overall structure collapses at any point.
Oh, it's a great mix of sort of action sci-fi, but it is so much fun, and your voice as a storyteller, you know, there's a really warm, it's almost a cheesy quality, like, but you're touching back on elements of that sort of storytelling that people are familiar with in a really loving way.
Suspenseful, comedic, and dramatic story revolving around something that may or may not be real, that your perception might change by the time you come out of it.
I was on board from the very beginning, and seeing it go from that little tiny seed into this enormous tree is amazingly rewarding.
Second favorite thing is definitely the getting together and listening to the finished product. But my utmost favorite thing was absolutely the recording process of being in the studio with other people. I just wish I would have been able to play against more of the cast. But I mean, the fact that we had as well, like such an ongoing relationship as a crew. It's something that I don't often see a lot of the time. Like as a voice actor, a lot of the time you're kind of like the kicker in an NFL team. Like when you're 5 yards away from the line, they'll call you in and punt, and that's it. You do your job and you're back on the bench. So yeah, I mean, it was the ongoing process and being in the same space as other people making stuff. Just so awesome.
The action scenes, I love the action scenes. It was just great for me to have that experience for the first time of really getting into a character physically running and making physical actions, but just recording the dialogue. That was something new for me. It was really fun recording it, and it's just great coming here tonight and sharing that experience with all of you guys, and you know, being here with the characters and be like, oh, that's right, that's when we did this bit, and oh no, this happens, and yeah, I'm trying not to do spoilers.
Oh, that was amazing to witness tonight. That was so good. So what I found really interesting is that at the end of writing everything and then passing it on to you, I had no idea how it would piece together, how it would all come to a singular product. And gosh, sound and effects did such a crazy good job. I think you were sitting in as well with it, so you were able to direct them of what goes where and stuff like that. But yeah, like it surprised me how well things synced up, not only in a time sense but in the story. And hearing the incredible voice actors and how everything just, yeah, again, coming back together and creates this cohesive piece of art, which I hope everyone will enjoy and honour and start to believe in Yowies.
Those screams were very real, and that was challenging, because afterwards, no matter, well, it helps to warm up and it helps to do all the right things, as your voice teachers would tell you. But the more visceral they became, and you know they were quite visceral, it really hurt, and I found myself in pain the next day. But also challenging was not giving things away. Even though I'd read the whole thing, I really wanted to make sure that it was moment to moment, so that way anyone listening to it had hopefully absolutely no idea of what was going to happen. Now, let's face it, there are only so many avenues that you can go down, but I really wanted there to be that element of mystery that the character would have felt at the same time.
Making someone else's words in the moment your words and honouring the emotion of what it is that you're trying to say. I hope I'm my harshest critic when it comes to that. But yeah, I always find that that's one of the trickiest parts of voice acting, but also one of the most rewarding when you nail it.
As much fun as it was playing with Martha, because I felt the character was quite different to the normal type of character I play. That also put a bit of stress on me, and I guess made me a bit nervous. And because obviously it's audio that we're recording, that challenge to be in character but not have any of Lauren's stress sort of leak into that, so that you would hear it. Yeah. So fingers crossed that worked.
I think I may have gotten just a synopsis and then an Excel chart of sound and music cues. You may have sent me a script, but often I'll not read much of it. I'll try to maybe skim it a little bit, but not focus on it hugely, because sometimes that influences the music in a very strong sense. So when you're conceptualizing, it's sometimes great being able to revert away from it and then go to the script after you've written it, and then you can make refinements to see how much, what needs to go where, and if there's any technicalities that needs to be fixed.
So I don't want to steal other people's stories, but I have a couple of very rational friends who used to live in the far north of Australia. One of them worked in the armed forces, and the other grew up there. And they have stories about things that they have experienced that they can't quite explain without adding something from somewhere else. So whether that's Yowies or whatever. I mean, we live in a country that has an oral history and a written history that goes 40,000 years back into the past. So I guess you could call me an agnostic. I would believe with my own eyes. I'm very curious from hearing other people's stories, and I'm certainly not arrogant enough to believe that if I haven't seen it, it doesn't exist.
I'd like to believe in Yowies. They sound fun.
I think I might now. I think I might, after coming out of that. Yeah, who knows?
Absolutely, especially the chocolate ones. And I believe we are still open to sponsorship.
Just thank you for letting me be part of the family. It was such a gift to be a part of something like that when everything else that adds up to the whole pie is just so strong.
Thanks so much for having me, and congratulations for creating a beautiful story.
All the crew, amazing job. Seriously, hats off to all of them, and hats off to you, and hats off to music and effects. Bravo, bravo to you all.
That's the first time I've heard it in its entirety. It's certainly the first time I've really appreciated the ending. And I mean, you don't want to milk it, but I just see even more. I mean, if this guy's still out there, there's more that could happen. Whether it be Yowies or Bigfoot or Yetis or who knows what else is going to come up next. And also, and I mean this, like yourself and the rest of the cast and the amazing sound crew, I just see this as the beginning.